Hello and welcome to Season 4 of the Sunday Podcast, presented by sportsshoes.com. I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
This podcast is all about elite distance running in the UK.
We're here to give you all the latest news updates around the sport,
as well as weekly interviews with athletes and coaches.
Stay up to date by following us on Instagram and X at Sunday Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, where we post athlete workout videos, shoe reviews and more.
Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello, welcome back to another episode. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes with our guest portion. Unfortunately today for some of you, but fortunately for some of you, our guests, no guests this week, but just me and Matt to ramble on. What I would say though is Matt's fast becoming close to a guest himself, having just picked up a BUCS silver medal coaching the Oxford boys on the weekend. So I'm sure we'll get our teeth stuck into him with that as well. Just a bit of context, today's been recorded Thursday, 8th of Feb. So Armagh is tonight. And the Boston indoor meets are on Friday and Saturday. So obviously when this pod comes out, they've already gone down, which is why we're not kind of previewing or reviewing those episodes, but they'll definitely appear in next week's episode. Obviously, we hope loads of Brits run quick and hopefully there's lots to get our teeth stuck into next week. Matt, let's get into BUCS though, mate. I know you're buzzing off that kind of silver medal for the men. First of all, mate, how was the experience though? Because I think that's one thing always people kind of refer back to with BUCS.
I am, mate. I'm itching to talk about it. Absolutely itching. But no, jokes aside, it was actually a really, really good event. Fair play to Leeds Uni and everyone involved organising it. The course was kind of reminded me of Woollerton Park a little bit when they've had the national there a couple of years ago. How you get these very like deep, boggy marshland kind of sections on the course. There was definitely a few of those at BUCS. And yeah, it was all run over kind of tufty terrain, very hilly. It was a super challenging course, which suited the Oxford crew, which was good. But the atmosphere was just fantastic. It was there was a lot of looping back on yourself as well, so people could really get and see a lot of the course. And it being like laps and stuff as well. So I couldn't fault the event, to be honest. I think a lot of people walk away just saying it's probably one of the hardest races they've ever done. I think sometimes that is a compliment in itself to cross country, is when everyone agrees with that after they've raced and stuff. So, but yeah, there were some great results. I think we spoke about this when the London International took place, when they announced they were going to hold the BUCS trial. Again, like just a little baffled why they chose to hold that World Uni trial at the London International when athletes aren't even in their university colours. And 2 weeks later was actually the big event that mattered. So not taking anything away from those who have qualified to go to World Unis, but obviously the results at BUCS were quite different to the London International, as you'd kind of expect, to be honest with you.
I think with that though, I think we did look. I think the World Unis obviously is in Oman, and I think it might even be this weekend.
It's next weekend, mate. It's next weekend.
Okay.
Still 2 weeks. Like, come on.
Yeah, I guess. Okay. Yeah, maybe.
But
tight turnaround, but still.
Yeah, we've kind of talked about that enough. But yeah, come on, mate. Ask me some questions. Let me open up.
Yeah, well, to be fair, mate, it was interesting, mate. You mentioned obviously like suited the Oxford crew. One thing, like I kind of my running research looks at a lot of that as well. Like, how did you actually prepare for that sort of race? Like rather than just physically preparing the guys to be in good shape, like you mentioned, kind of the course and stuff. How did you prepare them for that?
I think for me, I've always been, from what I've learned in the sport, not saying I'm an expert at all. But I think you've just got to put people in positions in the race where they can go and succeed. And I think during the actual race, we got in positions where they kind of grew and grew and grew throughout the race. And everyone's been there. Everyone's had these races where they've just gained confidence every kilometre that's gone by. They've been picking people off. And so it's working to your strengths and knowing that where you're going to be at certain points and actually mentally how that's going to make you feel. And we were kind of always chasing. We were kind of moving up throughout the whole race. This is on the men's side, considering that they got a team silver. So and late on, like our top man, our top scorer Tom, he finished fifth overall, and I just knew a couple of the lads ahead of him. He'd raced them multiple times, and if he had them in his sights going into last lap, I think he had a lot more to run for. And it's interesting, isn't it, cross country? And I think it's it comes down to that old cliche kind of how bad you want it and what have you got to run for, what have you got to prove. And I just think, you know, the group, the club, the uni just actually had a lot to prove, and a lot to run for, and there was a lot of hunger there, and I think that got the best out of them, to be honest with you. But also I think the advantage we have over, I say an advantage, one of the very few, I guess, and I think a lot of smaller unis out there will agree on this, is the whole club can buy into these university competitions. And I think big universities like Loughborough, like Birmingham, it's very challenging because you've got a lot of athletes there who have their own agenda, and their own goals, and rightly so, because perhaps they are that level above. And I think that's one of the advantages that we could actually play to on the weekend just gone, is back in September. Even before that, it was very team focused this year, at least for the cross country. Track will be a bit different. Everyone will go off and tackle their own events and own disciplines. But that was the biggest thing, because obviously I think Loughborough had a few missing and stuff, and we took that opportunity.
Yeah, that's it. It's an important thing you mentioned, isn't it? It's almost like you talk about that desire to kind of achieve, and I think a lot of people go into BUCS thinking, oh yeah, I just want to run good for myself, like the best I can do. Yeah, if we get a medal as a team, that's a bonus. But I think, yeah, definitely some of the not even small unis, but just smaller than some of those big talent hubs, like Oxford, for
Mm.
example, where you all have that kind of attitude. Actually, like, yeah, our top guy doesn't need to win. Our last guy doesn't need to. I don't know, where was your last man? Like in the 40s,
No way, mate.
or not even. Yeah,
21st. 21st. That's how kind
21st.
of
Wow.
crazy the
Yeah,
team
yeah,
competition is. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, like that's insane, to be honest. Like, whereas like just knowing like all those spots matter, for example. And obviously one thing we got coming up as well is that national cross country. And often we see people win the team title in that with like a last man or woman in sort of like the 70s, 80s, because of how
Mm.
kind of rich the depth is in terms of like variety of clubs. So I do think that's the cool element of cross country that sometimes we don't always get in this country. So good to hear, mate.
Yeah, the team element was huge, and that was one of the things. Walking away from it, every team there was just, over the just there for each other. It just brings so much more atmosphere to an event. It really does. And even the introduction of the women's short course, and I know the men's short course has been around for a while, but once those guys are done, they're on the course, making fair play to Birmingham and Loughborough, making so much noise. Definitely at some points, and virtually everyone I spoke to who was in those long races, walked away and just said like best race they've ever done. Not from a performance perspective, but just atmosphere. And I feel like, yeah, the nationals, we're going to preview that in a week or so's time. That's an amazing event as well. But typically, only two or three teams get pumped for it because they're the only ones able to actually contest it. You could argue that happens a little bit at BUCS with Birmingham and Loughborough, but I think we are starting to see overall now just the standards being raised across the board at university level, and there's a lot more unis in contention, which is just great to see, because I think it won't be long before we start to see, I mean, Leeds were getting up there on the podium now as well, so we just start to see a few different names at BUCS taking these team titles.
Yeah, definitely, and that's always good for the sport going forward, isn't it? Let's chat about some of those individual winners then, because obviously I think we did a little bit of a preview last week, and as expected, Will Barnicoat kind of took away the men's title as expected, because obviously coming from his caliber on the Eurocross, I think no surprise that he took that men's title. What was it like seeing that in person, Matt?
Oh mate, he just cruised around. I said a lot of the course was on marshland. Um, or what looked like marshland. It was so boggy, and he did not move at all. A lot of athletes, you'd see them sink, you would see them, their upper body would move all over the place. They weren't getting good footing. Barnacle, dude, the guy looked like he was just running on a track, to be honest with you. Completely unfazed the whole way around. We know he's good in the mud. I mean, Jesus Christ, he won Eurocross in awful conditions as well. But yeah, I don't even think he was working that hard. I think the course was just testing him because of the sheer nature of the course. but I don't think he was working that hard, to be honest with you, and which is encouraging because I'm actually really excited to see what this guy can do at the World Cross. And I'm not sure how many people. I mean, we could see a Mohammed situation. Sorry, a Zach Mohammed situation where he was our sole representative, wasn't he, in Australia? We could see a bit of a
Mm.
situation like that. I don't know. Obviously, Hugo Milner won the international. Whether he'll go World Cross, who knows? But yeah, I wonder how many people are gonna line up alongside him. But he's a huge talent, and I'm thoroughly enjoying watching him in the midst of all these crazy fast times that are taking place. This guy, I'm just excited about him. To be honest, simple as that. Yeah, but also Amelia Quirk on the women's side as well had a good duel with Phoebe Barker, and in similar fashion, just kind of eased away, let the course kind of do the work and fatigue those around her, and just eased away in the end.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's great to see it, and obviously you put up some stories on our Instagram, which were good as well to kind of help people who weren't there. That's one thing with BUCS, isn't it? That be nice to get a stream at some point for an event like that. But I guess it can never really get that atmosphere anyway. So maybe that's why they keep it to that. But on from kind of some good news, some exciting news from BUCS. Onto kind of the dark side of the sport that we don't like so much. I think everyone has seen Mo Katir in the news. He's missed 3 tests. Probably someone as well who I don't know from a personal perspective anyway. I feel like a lot of people have been rumbling about him for quite a few years, and maybe it goes to kind of that old saying, "No smoke without fire." But obviously, no negative test, but missing 3 is never a good sign, is it, mate?
Oh boy, yeah, you say the dark side no one likes to talk about. I actually think it's almost the opposite. Everyone likes to talk about this side of the sport. Honestly, it's a little bit of a shame. I was actually speaking to a Spanish friend the other day, and the Spanish media are all over it, I guess, as you'd expect. But they're never pushing anything out positive in the sport. They hardly cover the sport in their own country, surrounding their own athletes. So, and we're a little bit like that in the UK, to be honest. I mean, how many I guess national news outlets are jumping all over kind of drugs, doping cases and stuff like that, compared to how many actually celebrate and follow the sport week in, week out. But yeah, I guess yeah, I mean a lot of people are obviously coming out and saying I told you so. It is 3 missed tests. It's not, he hasn't actually doped. It is a bit sketchy. I mean, in the same week, Mike Cerrone, the 800 guy, studied in America, studied at collegiate level. Hasn't he just been done for evading a test as well? And at I think it was at a Kenyan race, Kenyan champs. I didn't read too much into that one because again, it's almost just like you're just like, yeah, we saw it coming almost. It's just another
Mm.
case. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how this one develops, whether we're going to see this guy on the track in the summer.
Yeah, because the rules are pretty clear. Like normally 3, that's it. You get a ban. It's as if you failed one. But obviously they can always make appeals, so I'm never really sure what it would be. I'd imagine it'd be like a year ban if he does get it though. It wouldn't be like a 4 year that he'd get for a positive. But to be fair, not as clued up on some of those testing procedures as some people, so won't kind of talk too much on that. But yeah, just thought we'd provide you with that news in case you hadn't heard
I
it.
think,
And then on to some good
well, I was
stuff
just
maybe,
going to say,
Matt.
mate, I
Or is there
think
anything you want to add? Yeah.
what, yeah, I think with the drugs, it's when you see someone just all like Mokatir will just always turn up and just rip a race. He'll rip it off the front, and I almost feel like people have, they have an inner feeling, don't they? They have a gut feeling of, especially those who follow the sport religiously like us, and you just think that's how possible is that? Like when we talk of athletes, like Whiteman came out this weekend, got beat by Hobbs Kessler, and like Commonwealth Games, emotionally drained, gets beat there, stuff like that. Like you see, they're just, I guess, a lot more human. Whereas I think sometimes when you do watch Katir, it's like really, like again, and
Mm.
and you get that feel with Jakob. But the thing is, with Jakob, he has this whole backstory, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, it all makes sense. Whereas Katir, he doesn't really have this backstory. He did burst onto the scene, and so you're like, well, how's that possible to be running the way you are? And I think that's why obviously everyone's very suspicious and everyone's so scared. Everyone deemed him to be so sketchy, but I guess, and I would say, if you're on two missed tests for Mo Katir, this is like I guess, an easy way off, an easy way out. If he misses three
Mm.
tests compared to if he gets busted, he can play the card like I missed three tests. They
Yeah,
didn't actually
lesser of
find
two
anything.
evils, isn't it? Yeah.
That's it. And I
Yeah.
think we might be seeing a case of that, to be honest.
Yeah, not good, is it? But we'll keep you updated as and when we hear more news about that. But over to Boston Indoor Grand Prix, then obviously quite a few Brits in that, and you mentioned Jake Wightman getting beat by Hobbs Kessler. It's I guess not really a problem, is it? Like how Wightman does in February of an indoor meet. Obviously, I'm sure he'd like to win, but as we've seen before, I think he's one of those athletes. It's almost like you mentioned, complete opposite of Katir. Really needs to kind of go through a season, pick up the paces. Like the guy ran what 3:34. I wouldn't be surprised if he then ran 3:31 like a week later, purely because he's got
Mm.
1,500 in his legs. So he's that sort of athlete, isn't it? I don't think anything to worry about. I think definitely just a positive to see that he's back, he's healthy, he's racing, and looks good.
Oh, mate, without a doubt. Um, I actually thought it was a pretty strong opener. Fair play. You haven't done a 1,500 race in what, 18 months, maybe even, yeah, about 18 months. And he looked really, really solid. Just didn't quite have the closing speed to get onto Hobbs, but I don't know. I feel like we've seen Hobbs Kessler perform like quite a few times in these sorts of events. He thrives in those sorts of races and situations. I think it's a lot easier to win races like that, whereas it wasn't a head to head, but there's a lot less people to contend with. That you haven't got to worry about positioning too much. I mean, to be honest, he just sat behind Whiteman, just drifted by him at the right time and just kicked on. Obviously, it's indoors as well, and it's a lot different outdoors. But it was a good run from Kesler, not taking anything away from him. To be fair.
Yeah, he's an interesting one, really. That I guess we don't talk too much about Americans on this pod, but he's almost like one that he's still so young that is he going to kind of kick on now, or is he going to almost do what has happened to Drew Hunter? Like, not taking anything away from Drew Hunter, like the guy like runs decent. Don't get me wrong, he's a pro out in America, but obviously a high school phenomenon that is kind of not really kind of built upon that foundation. Whereas Hobbs Kessler's now, if he's done it for a couple of years, it'll be interesting to see this year kind of whether he does kick on or not.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's where my head's at as well with him. Is is he able to kick on and go and run? Even Cole Hocker, mate, we've seen him do crazy things, at domestic, well, not domestic level, but like I guess in America in these races, run crazy times, and again hasn't clicked for him on the world stage. So 1,500 running is an interesting one, but a few more results further down, mate. To be fair, Tom Keane 3:38, 4 indoors. That's a nice PB. Yeah, that's nice running from him. So he was also in that race, but we probably got to talk about that women's 3K. Melissa Courtney Bryant just missed out on the standard, by the way. 8:30 for the world standard, 8:37.74. Presume she'll be in a spot to get invited. Um, but Jess Hull and Ellie St. Pierre, 8:24 national record for Hull. It's outrageous.
Yeah, we were just chatting off air, weren't we? Like, kind of thinking about our own running and thinking about like whether 8:24, like how good of a conversion that is for what's Hull's 1,500 meter PB?
Off the top of
Like
my head,
just sub four?
I think she has run 3:55.
Oh, is it 55 now? Okay. But you were saying what Matt, you run 3:51, right? And you said 8:24 is no like kind of like walk in the park, even as a low 350s guy.
No, not yeah.
So
I think it's a very impressive run, and I think it's the start of potentially starting to see her step up to 5Ks as well. But
mm.
yeah, and to see two women battle it out as well over that distance was very impressive.
Yeah, and what's going to be really exciting, obviously you've got Laura Muir coming up in a 2 mile this weekend, is to see what sort of performance she puts in. So we'll get into that a bit later on when we start previewing some races. But yeah, Jess Hull's 8:24 is quicker than Laura Muir's PB. So
It
if
is.
that puts it in some perspective, then that's one way to look at it, because Laura Muir obviously extremely accomplished over that 1,500 to 5K, and obviously the 3K in between. So definitely. Some more Boston indoor results. Obviously, got a few more Brits running, didn't we, Matt?
Yeah, we did. So, like I said, I can just quickly go down a little bit further down. I thought decent runs from Izzy Fry, Hannah Nuttall, both running PBs. Hannah Nuttall, by the way, 8:45. I think it's a bit like we always say about the standards and stuff, but it's a bit of a shame. You're running so well, and yeah, they're not going to appear at the World Indoors, which is a bit of a shame for people like Nuttall, because it would probably be a nice place for her to kind of, you know, burst onto the international scene, I guess. But strong indoor running anyway, and I think we might see her in Boston again, which is going to be it's tonight. Well, the Valentine meet. So I know there's one next week. There's one today. There's loads in Boston, by the way. People that they are making to go off topic a little bit, like $75 entry, 2,000 entries at that last Boston meet. You do the math. They're making some ridiculous numbers on these meetings, and they're just having. There's one this weekend. There's one next weekend. Rumor has it there's going to be another one as well, sort of towards the very back end of February. It's crazy. It's crazy. How many meetings? I think this one track is going to be booked out. This track's going to be booked out from January to bloody May. In a few years' time, it really is. But yeah. So a few other races. I mean, men's 3K. Westy ran 750. Disappointing from him. I think he's had a little bit of illness or whatever. So. But what do we make of Germa's 729?
I think any 3K where we're getting down to those sorts of times, like, look, it's always impressive. But then, what do you make of it? I think I don't know. You know me, mate. I just don't get that surprised by these runs anymore, or that necessarily excited by them because I think it's the shame for me is we see so many races that are paced really well, set up for time, particularly like indoors these days when obviously you guarantee conditions. And I just don't really get surprised. I think that it's almost been saturated. Like those sorts of performances have been saturated a bit. Like you mentioned, we've got like Boston meets coming out of our ears. So I'm like, well, someone else is going to come along next weekend and do something as well. So it's not the same as kind of, I don't know, even like 3, 4 years ago. Like you're like, oh, that one indoor meet I can look forward to, and then it pops off, and you see
Yeah.
someone run super quick, and that's the highlight of your indoor season. Whereas I'm sort of like, oh yeah, cool, 7:29, nice. Like, well, let's see what happens at the Olympics, because it feels like that's one of the only ones where you can really look for it. Obviously, World Indoors as well, like sets you up really nicely. But yeah, just difficult for me to get overly excited, if I'm honest.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, but I think we can safely say Gomez is in just as good a shape as last year. He ran a lot of that on his own. I was just looking at his splits though, and this is wave like technology for you. He ran over 200 within just under point 0.4 of a second difference between every single 200 split.
Mm.
Like super, 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 super even. It's ridiculous how even he is. Um, yeah. So actually 29, what was his fastest split? 29.8 and yeah, 29.79. His first 200 was his fastest two, and then his slowest two was 30.37.
Mm.
How quick is that?
It's
Like, I mean,
ridiculous.
how even is that? It's
Yeah,
crazy.
but that's the way to run
Um,
quick, isn't it? Like you say, the wave lights is helping people run quick more consistently because they don't have to worry so much about their pacing. Just put one foot in front of the other. If you're physiologically there, you'll get it. What I do get excited about that we've got kind of on our results list is things like that mile in Lee Valley last night, seeing 3 Brits go under 4 minutes in the UK. Something that we don't normally see. That was a track record in Lee Valley, indoors over the mile as well,
mm,
which is something we've become accustomed to seeing in America all the time. But look, I think the mile definitely still has its place. Like particularly indoors, I think it's really cool when it's run. And I think that sort of thing is exciting. Like to see like a close race, see Brits getting in it, see Brits not having to go to Boston or wherever it is in Europe to run fast times, just going to kind of one of the few indoor tracks we have in this country and making it happen.
Yeah, it was a good meet last night. 3K was good. I always enjoy those. Nice live stream as well.
Mm.
Yeah, there were some pretty strong performances as well out there. So, and it's especially that mile to go sub 4 in Lee Valley. To be honest, it's pretty good going. So I don't think it's the quickest track in the world if we're being honest as well.
So just to wrap up kind of those mile results, we had Joe Tuffin with a win 3:59.24, Tyler Billiard 3:59.33, and then Rory Leonard 3:59.55. So super close race over in the men's mile at Lee Valley last night.
Yeah, it was indeed. Women's as well. Shakira King won, so good running for her. All under 17s really in the women's race. I mean, Kate Axford was due to run it, ended up running over in France as well. So we'll quickly recap that meet because there's been a lot of athletics in the last week or two, hasn't there? So yeah, and Axford she managed their 9:12, so season's best. I think she would have liked a little bit more, to be honest. The way she's been running, what we've seen of her of late, I think she would have liked to get kind of close down to 9 minutes. But that's, I guess, just us predicting. We're not inside her camp or anything like that. But that meet won in 9:07, and that's I would say that's a winnable race for someone like Axford.
Yeah, you think so, but I do just think like she's someone trying to make that jump from like a really good road performer in some of these domestic races, and we'll get into some of those in our previews later on. And someone that can kind of compete in those and run well on the track to being sort of your thoroughbred track athlete. And I think seeing obviously the likes of Jess Hull we mentioned earlier running 8:24, it makes you then kind of, I think it reconfigures how we see like normal 3K times, because like anywhere near like anyone sub 9 minutes, for example, like a couple of years ago, like indoors over 3K as a woman, everyone's being like, wow, that's an insane run.
Yeah.
But I think we've just seen so many good performances, like we kind of mentioned, like all those British girls, for example, in Boston. It then becomes, you look at performances slightly differently, but actually a couple of years ago we're thinking, oh, that's a brilliant run. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we always forget indoors that athletes they are building towards outdoors. Is how much is it worth as well? But by the way, in that same meet, James Gormley took the dub. And the men's side beat Germa's little brother, by the way. So there's a scalp for you. 7:48, 56 PB. So what did he win? He won in Sheffield. He's done a little bit of pace on the European circuit, and he's got another win out in France last night. So Gormley's probably going into that men's 3K at the British Champs as a potential favourite, to be honest with you. If the big guns, I think Adam Fogg was entered. But other than that, James West was obviously entered, but Gormley running quicker than Westy at the moment.
Yeah, and let's get into some of that, mate, because I think that pretty much wraps up our results for this week. Obviously, loads been going on, but let's get into some of that British Champs preview, and we can start right there if you want with that men's 3K, because I think British Champs is always a funny one, isn't it? I think particularly now with the standards being so hard, like I think if you're a top athlete and you don't have the standard, or even if you do, you're probably thinking, right, well, if I run the standard, I'm going to go regardless. And if I don't have it, low key, what's the point of me going to British Champs? And then with that, what we're seeing is sort of your I want to say not always sub elite, but kind of like maybe not our top athletes who we can test in British Champs, but it can be a really good thing in terms of getting a chance to get a British Champs medal. You've got to be in the race to win one, obviously. So no kind of shade on anyone who takes a medal when the field's not as good as it could be. But it is kind of a slightly different event. So obviously, what we see outdoors, or even what we've seen indoors in the past.
Yeah, so you would think like that. You would think that because the World Athletic Standards there's not much to race for. Yeah, it's not encouraging that many people to go to it but because the World Indoor has been so hard to qualify for. However, I've been through the entries, mate, and almost the fields look deeper. They certainly look deeper from a perspective of those who are, top domestic athletes and maybe haven't got GB vest yet, but those who are like very, very close on the cusp, those sorts of runners. And to be honest, like that men's 3K, I don't know what they're gonna do come the champs. They've got a headache because they scheduled a straight final. They got 26 confirmed entries. And so if they're gonna chuck them all in one race, fair play, I'd love to see it. But we just know they're not. So how are they gonna do it? Are they gonna have an A and a B final? Um, or are they just going to split the fields evenly and do the fastest time? How is someone going to be fairly crowned British champions? That is a headache unless they schedule some last minute heats on the timetable. At the moment, they
Mm.
got no time for it. They haven't. But there you go. There's a headache for British athletics, and we could see another masterclass from them next weekend. But yeah, that men's 3K got a whole host of entries in. So's the 15, so's the 8, or both the women's side as well. Like it's looking very good, and in fact, I think because World Indoors is so hard, and because the likes of Josh Kerr, they don't have to turn up, they don't have to run. I think it's almost given people are like, oh, do you know what? I could actually be a British medalist. Because the big players they're not there, and being an Olympic year as well. I don't know how many big players want to go to World Indoors. To be honest with you.
It's risky. It's risky to go well indoors. And I think, like you say, definitely it's encouraging people to think that actually I can go to British champs, I can get a medal, I can win because, for example, like you say, Josh Kerr's not there, Laura Muir's not there, Mark Scott's not there, he's on the roads now, that sort of thing. And I think that that really is good for your sub elites and probably they are elites, but I think it's just easier to categorize in that way sometimes. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's so tough, isn't it?
super interesting to see how that goes out. We'll see some people that I'm sure will be very, very happy next weekend getting their first British medal. So looking forward to that.
But
Let's go
let's
into those fields in a bit more depth, mate.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Let's get in. I mean, we may as well start with that 3K. I mean, Ellis Cross is in there. Adam Fogg's in there. Hennigan's in there. Rory Leonard. Alfie Manthorpe, who interesting to see, obviously, nabbed the GB vest on a cross as well. Just your usual suspects, really. Brothers in there. Westy's in there, obviously, defending champ. So what can he do? You got the two wheelers in there as well. Joe Wigfield, James Young. And Neil Gawley, probably the interesting one. I mean, with Gawley, it's just figuring out what event this guy is actually going to run, to be honest with you. Um,
All three, mate. All three.
is he going to do the A15 and 3? But actually, having looked a little bit deeper, there is no Gormley. So I think we're going to see Gormley contest the 1500, to be honest.
Okay, that does change things, doesn't it? But like you say, so many names there that you would not want to kind of bet on a couple of those. Like apart from Gawley, maybe like or none of those are sort of
If Gawley
your
does it, yeah. If Gawley, I mean, I was
yeah,
surprised
none of
Gawley
those are
didn't
sort of
break
your
the
headline
Boston.
athletes except Gawley, are they? So
I think I'd probably say Westy's favorite. Even if he's not kind of at his best, we just know Westy can kick. And looking at the field, there's a few low 750 guys in there. Um, I think it's going to be between Westy and Fogg, to be honest with you, and who can kick the best out of those two if they both do it because they're both in the 50. Well, Fogg's in the 1500. As well as Gawley, and I think we haven't really seen Gawley race this indoor season at all. So if he does want to go world indoors, surely he's going to try and do it in the 1500. You would have thought that's his best shot.
yeah, it's his best shot. You'd think, particularly after last year, how well he ran in that indoor campaign. But at the same time, maybe a bit off a two, bit sorry, bit off a bit more than he could chew last season. Kind of racing the indoors so much, and then perhaps didn't perform as he'd like outdoors. So like you said earlier, mate, Olympic year it's risky sometimes. So people have got to take those sorts of things into account, don't they?
They do, and also in that 1500, Callum Elson in there, and Piers Copeland, who's actually running. He's picked up a couple of wins on the circuit now. 341, he ran the other day abroad, so he's starting to get into some decent form again. Copeland, not quite the form we saw from him a couple of years ago, but he's heading in the right direction. So I think he's going to be a bit of a threat. So whatever happens, we're going to see some new exciting British champions. To be honest with you, and And the men's 800, if we'll have a look again at the favourites, but to be honest, it wasn't stacked. I mean, Gawley was the runaway favourite if he does it. After that, you got Callum Dodds in there as well. He'd probably bank on sneaking a medal. Guy Learmonth, but again, haven't seen much from him. So yeah, the 800 and even the 15 to be honest, wide open if Gawley doesn't contest him.
Yeah, you say about Limov though. Limov is that 800 indoor specialist, isn't he? So wouldn't bet against him, even if he is kind of coming to the end of his career. So be
I would.
interesting to see. Yeah, you reckon?
I still would bet against him. Um,
Okay. Well, obviously, if Gawley's in it, but I think without Gawley, I'd back Guy Limov still. So
yeah,
now,
we haven't seen much of Learmonth in a while now, so yeah, we can't expect too much. But yeah, over to the women's then. Uh, actually, yeah, we got to shout out James Rhodes here. He put out an interesting tweet, and I think I think it was the women's 1500 is the only event where we're actually going to see people who can qualify for world contest it, which is quite well more than one person in an event who can actually go to world contest it. And that's the women's 15, and those people we think will be Bell, Walcott Nolan, and Sarah McDonald. Because I think we're going to see Muir run a different race, but yeah, women's 800, Baker, Boffy, you've got some really good standard in here. Riki's obviously doing it as well. Interestingly, in fact, this whole indoor campaign to not see Hodgkinson run indoors has been quite a surprise because she has done that the last few years.
yeah, I mean, what's going on there? Have we heard like any sort of kind of statement
What's
about
going
that?
on
You
there?
know?
I think
No,
it's an
no,
Olympic
just
year. She's
interesting, isn't
keeping a
it?
low
Yeah,
profile.
yeah. That's what I mean. But what I find fascinating about athletics is any other sport, like you having to put out a statement to say why you're not doing something, and in athletics you can just sort of go away and hide, and
Sure.
no one will ever know. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because I think is also interesting because it means people like us doing guesswork, people on the ground doing guesswork. No doubt someone will send us an Instagram message and say, "Oh, it's because Hodgkinson's doing this. She's targeting this or that." So I'm sure we'll get someone in the know, which is always kind of nice to hear from. So if you have any intel on that, let us know or anything else. But yeah, I do think that 800 for the women's looks good. But I think the point you made about that tweet, obviously, I think it's the point I was making at the start. Like it's a weird British champs, isn't it? Like the
Mm.
one race. Because I guess the 800, that's probably the one where they could go run the standing in the race more than any other. But like
Yeah.
you're not going to get that in the 15 or the 3K, are you? So it's a bit of a shame that people, yes, it's brilliant that people are going to be crowned British champ, but it's a shame that you're not British champ and, oh yeah, I'm going as
I don't
well,
know, mate.
for some
I think
people.
yeah, I think yes and no to that. I think it's going to hopefully bring back the passion for championship racing and the meaning
Mm,
behind it. And in fact, it's quite nice that, to be honest, bar the women's 1500, there's not going to be any politics involved in any races. And I think that's quite a nice feeling. So it is just pure, we're going to see pure championship racing. I think, unless we
mm.
see, like you said, certain people try and get after the standard. Um, there are outdoor standards as well that athletes can qualify on, in that window. But again, there's not too many of them. But but yeah, women's 3K, obviously Muir's going to line up in that. She's going to go Milrose Games, try and get the standards because that one she ran in December, that wasn't ratified.
Yeah, so she's going to run a 2 mile at Milrose, and obviously get a 3K split for that, or would there be a 2 mile conversion maybe as well? But I think probably just a split. But you'd back her still to do it, even with 200 to go. She's not even going to need to ease up, is she? I think she'll be
Mm.
absolutely fine. And obviously going out there to win Milrose games as well. And that's one of the reasons I love those races at the Armory because they seem to kind of mean something as well as just not just being kind of a place of fast times in the winter.
Mm. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting to see how she gets on this weekend. She's got some pretty stiff opposition as well. So yeah, she's not gonna have it all her own way, to be honest. Obviously up against Alicia Monson, isn't she? And the way Jess Hull and Oh, so Perrier race last weekend. I think we could see something similar. Two girls just going at it on route to a bloody low 8:20
Mm.
mark. It's like that. That actually wouldn't surprise me. Um, so let's see what happens. I'm super excited for Milrose Games. But yeah, I think Muir comfortable victory in the 3K. I think it's a tick box exercise. But buddy, got to shout her out. Ince Fitzgerald. She's down. Youngest in the field by quite some way, 17-year-old. So how's she going to get on? Melissa Courtney Bryant. Obviously, you'd think Melissa Courtney Bryant's going for that second spot. Hannah Nuttall in there as well. So strong depth to it. Amy Eloise Neal. So yeah, good depth to that race. Um,
Mm.
but Muir's just so good. Yeah. However, Snowden beat her outdoors. Could we see something similar indoors?
Yeah.
I don't think so. But yeah, that's kind of your British champs. Those who are doing it, again, I'm looking forward to it because I actually think you've been talking about worlds, but I think it's a clean slate, and you're just going to get people running to win, and we're going to see some new people on the podium for sure. And we had Jack Rowan last week. He picked up, he said he picked up what was it, that silver or bronze at the British
Mhm.
Champs 5K a few years ago. That one coming out of COVID, and even indoors as well, he picked up a few medals. And look what that did to his career. Because if athletes can go there and go to brands and say, I'm a British medalist, look how big we are as a nation in the sport of athletics. Look how much talent we have coming out of it. And brands would go, oh, hold on a second, this person's actually got a few accolades to their name. Yep, here you go. Here's a sponsorship, and it could
Mm.
change athletes' careers. I think that's
Mm.
what's quite exciting about this champs, and hopefully that is what happens.
Oh yeah, definitely, mate. No, I'm looking forward to the racing. It was more just I was like, oh, I just wish it was like they win and they get something else, because I think sometimes they're like British outdoors, for example, we love it when we go there and there's like everyone's got the time, so you still get that pure racing because they don't need the time
Mm.
on the day, but they're just battling it out for that kind of Olympic team or world team, whatever it is. But obviously, yeah, kind of the racing for the medals super important as well. We got a few more races coming up, don't we, Matt? As well as British champs, you got Podium 5K over in Battersea as well. So another one of those meets coming out, obviously sponsored by Sport Shoes too. So got to shout that one out. And we always see some fast times in there, don't we, at that course?
Fast times and big cash. That's what it's been kind of dubbed as, isn't it? That's what it's been known as lately. So yeah, I'll be down there. I think I'm doing something crazy on the back of a bike, with a camera in hands, and trying to film for those at home. So I'll be down there next weekend. I'm thoroughly looking forward to it. And again, we talk about races, good vibe and good atmosphere. That's one. Battersea's slowly becoming. I mean, we joked about Boston being booked up every bloody weekend for a race. I think Battersea is. I think if there's not a
Yeah.
podium down there, there's an under the lights 5K, there's half marathons bloody every weekend through run through. That place has got to be, yeah, the most booked park in the country. So, but yeah, it'll be good to see because again, I guess dates clashing a little bit with indoors, and you're in the midst of a cross country season. But I know last year, because Walcott Nolan came out, smashed it, and Tom Keane as well on the men's side smashed it, came out, and that was just because of the big prize purse. It encouraged these athletes to go out there and have a run out. So I think we'll see a few different winners and a few different names down at that one on next Friday. To be honest with you.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think it is good that like sometimes we talk about like the number of races kind of saturating the fields, and yeah, it can do that. But at the same time, like in the winter, sometimes it is good that athletes can really plan the perfect season. If there is a 5K at Battersea every week, for example, or if there is a 5K in Boston every week for 3 months, it means you can pick the exact weekend that works for you and your periodization, your training
It's
plan.
true.
So it's positive in that way, and also kind of you have those negatives in that everyone's not racing each other all the time. But like in terms of like if you want to kind of if you're not like a top elite athlete who has to kind of hit certain meets like Diamond Leagues, World Tours, whatever, you can really pick and choose your races to ensure that you're doing exactly what you want to do every weekend of the year almost. So I think
Mm.
that's got to be positive in some
I
ways,
think as
hasn't it?
well. I think as well that yeah, the time is quite good for the Battersea one because it's almost a bit of overflow from Armagh. See, we know Armar's going down tonight, and I think those people who don't want to travel to Armagh can't book it off work, can't take it off work. It's good that they've got one, and exactly, the organisers, Keith down there, Keith Schofield, who helps organise it, and Belgrave and Hercules Wimbledon and Herne Hill, those clubs who get involved with it. That's exactly how they view it. They go, well, people are booking time off work to go race in Armagh. What can we offer, which is the same? And so yeah, it is a good opportunity, and it is nice that we can have a bit of overflow for those people.
What do you think? Who's going to have more sub 14s for the men, and then what should we say, sub 16s for the women's?
Oh, what?
Bassi or Armagh this year?
Oh man, I mean, Armagh, no doubt. Again, I was looking at Armagh's results last year, and 60 men, 14, 20 or below.
Mm,
I don't know how many people who went sub 14, but that was something scandalous, like 20 people almost sub 14, I think,
yeah,
in one race. I think they've got the record, haven't they, for the most sub 14s?
I
It,
think so. Something like that.
but
I remember that. I
anyway,
remember that. Was it last? Was it last year though? Or maybe they. I'm pretty sure they might like someone was. They had something. Batsy had something over Armagh last year though. Because I remember they tweeted afterwards. Um,
oh, they
but I
did.
don't know.
I think when actually, I don't think they've got the record for the most sub 14. Sorry, that's probably gone to a more serious race, but I think it's sub 15. It's that barrier where
Okay.
they get
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
many numbers
Yeah.
below. And I think that might be the barrier that they were contesting last year.
Yeah. It's like top
So
trumps, isn't it? That's all I meant. Was
well,
just
like honestly, there must be several hundred below sub 15 at both of those meets coming out last
mm,
year. So, and in fact, yeah, if 60th got 14:20, Ethan Hussey, by the way, um, at Almar last year. Goodness me, what are they going to get? But I don't know if they got weather on their side. Looks very cold, very wet. So it'll be interesting to see
okay.
how everyone gets on. Obviously, women's 3K up there as well. How many women can we get sub nine? Will we see a sub nine clocking? That's always a talking point. But mate, let's quickly preview Milrose Games because for me, this is the big one this weekend. There's lots going on, but Sunday night, I know where I'll be. Well, it's not even Sunday night, is it? It's early Monday morning. I'll probably stay up for it. But yeah, we got that Wanamaker mile. George Mills and Adam Fogg. Can Mills back up at 12:58? I mean, I'm sure he can,
Mm.
obviously. But Adam Fogg's in there as well from a British perspective. Who are they up against? Hobbs Kessler, Neguse, Garcia Romo, Spaniards, obviously the OAC guy. Cooper Tier. Good to see him back under his new coach. Well, not new coach, old coach, I guess. Ben Thomas, gone back to him. Coskren's in there. So yeah, I think we're comfy. I think we're going to see. I mean, last year, what was it? 347 we saw.
Mm.
Was it Kerr and the Goose going at it? I think we could see something very, very similar. To be honest, but will you be most interested in the men's 2 miles? Josh Kerr, world record attempts.
I think so, mate. I think so. Obviously, like just I think, and this is what he does well, isn't it? He's the guy who sells himself. He kind of comes in and he's like, oh yeah, I'm a 1500 guy. All the best guys are in the 1500, but because of Josh Kerr and his personality, now I'm like, oh yeah, 2 miles are one to watch because he's come out and said he's going for that world record. He's got more of a story behind it, and obviously British perspective, like you want to see Josh Kerr do well, I'm sure. So I think that's the one I'll be most looking forward to, mate. And again, Laura Muir on a 2 mile as well. So from a British perspective, your two best runners on both two best distance runners in the country, men's and women's, both doing the 2 mile this weekend. Um, so that'll be super interesting to see, mate.
Yeah, that field's stacked, by the way. Well, I say stacked. I think it'd be interested to see Kerr and Grant Fisher go at it. Um, they're the two big names. Paul Hocker's in there as well, and Joe Klecker, and George Beamish and OAC love that meet. They always turn up at Milrose Games. They love indoors, to be fair, OAC. Yeah. So that's Milrose Games for you. I mean, there's a couple 800s as well on the women's and men's side. No Brits in them though. Mark English is in one. He's running well. So it'll be a good meet all in all. And obviously, yeah, if you love the sprints, there's a shed load of sprints races going down too. So Lum, I mean, that's we've rattled through a few things. I mean, Barcelona half, we'll probably recap that as opposed to preview it because it's going to take place as well, probably would have happened by the time you're listening to this podcast, and we'll know all about what Mark Scott ran for his debut, and if there's anyone else who ran fast as well. I say
Yeah,
debut.
yeah.
It's not his
Debut under Chris
debut.
Jones. Debut under
Yeah,
Chris
debut under
Jones.
Chris
So
Jones. That's a good point. Yeah.
there you go. And obviously make sure you go listen to that pod if you haven't already. And then Jack Rose, who was last week too. But thanks for listening, guys. Hopefully we've not bored you too much. I think we've reviewed and previewed about 10 odd meets there. So hopefully that's kind of given you your fix of athletics for this week. And we'll catch you very soon. We've got a very, very good guest coming up next week, but we always would say that. But we won't tell you who he is just yet, but definitely look forward to that one. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you soon.